You're listening to the Tales of Leadership podcast. This podcast is for leaders at any phase on their leadership journey to become a more purposeful and accountable leader, what I like to call a PAL. Join me on our journey together towards transformational leadership. Welcome back to Tales of Leadership podcast. I am your host, Josh McMillian, an active duty Army officer with over 16 years of leadership experience and on a mission to create better leaders, what I like to call purposeful, accountable leaders. And my vision is to positively affect 1 million lives in both the military and the civilian workforce in the next 10 years by promoting transformational stories and skills. On today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing, I would say, a good friend and a mentor of mine that has really helped me out, Brianna Greenspan, by instilling my miracle morning routine that I do every single day. Brianna has been in the professional and personal development field for over 14 years, which started by her overcoming her own genetic physical challenges. Her unwavering devotion for healthy living, personal development, coupled with her passion for the Miracle Morning movement and the Everything is Right About You movement, made for a perfect opportunity to impact and lead school communities and share the Miracle Morning practice with millions of people. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Brianna. Brianna, welcome to the Tales of Leadership podcast. It's a long time overdue, and I'm glad that I was finally able to get you in here because you're someone who's really helped me out, and I'm excited to jump into your story. So how are you doing?
I am well. You know what? I wanted to be on your podcast since you launched it. I'm so proud of you and grateful for your demonstration of leadership. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm always very interested in to kind of start with the same question of how you define leadership, because I have people on from the Coast Guard, I've had people on from the Army and in civilian leadership, but I think you occupy such a unique space when it comes to like wellness, and I would love to hear how you define it.
Yeah, I love that question, and people have such differing perspectives on leadership. But I think it really boils down to doing all the good you can in all the ways you can, at all the times you can, for all the beings you can, as often as you can. And leadership looks different while you're in different roles. And a lot of us wear a lot of hats, and we're leaders in various spaces at various times. And being in integrity with what it means to be a conscious leader kind of looks like doing all the good you can in all the ways you can at all the times you can for all the beings you can as often as you can.
I love that you said leadership looks different in different leadership positions, and I think that is a nugget. You already dropped a nugget, and we're like two minutes in. It's because I've learned that is like throughout my journey, each role that I've had to adapt my leadership style to get the desired results. And like, for example, now being in an acquisition profession and working with very highly educated individuals, super talented, I can't be the same leader that I was when I was a company commander leading like 200 soldiers getting ready to go to combat. So that is already an amazing nugget. So thank you for that. I would love to take the time now, if you could just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, I'll start by saying how we met. We met on the Miracle Morning Mindset and Motivation Clubhouse room that's been going on for almost 2-ish years. We just hit our 2-year mark in the last month or so. And that was a space that I held and co-created with hundreds of thousands of other people during the pandemic, representing leadership from within, representing wellness as a catalyst for personal leadership. And what's something that is so important is how we care for ourselves so that we can be leaders in a sustainable and healthy way for those that we're serving. Because it's not effective for us to show up in a way that we're serving others at the expense of ourselves. So that is one facet of myself. I've represented the Miracle Morning for the last 14 years and bring the Miracle Morning practices to schools across the globe. I'm an author and educator, speaker, all of those types of things surrounding personal leadership and wellness.
So you dropped another nugget, and I love like digging into some of those, because really one of the goals of this podcast is to share transformational leadership practices. And a thing that is so commonly overlooked is ourself. And I think you used the metaphor when I jumped into the room the first time and heard you talk, is that as a leader, we have to fill up our cup. So we go into the world and then it overflows, and then we can kind of pour ourselves into our work and then pour ourselves into our families. And when I started this like coaching journey, I started looking at it between work, family, and self. Everyone talks about work, everyone talks about family, but no one takes the time for themselves. And I think as a leader, it's not selfish. And that's one thing that I've really tried to impress upon, especially like people that I lead. It's not selfish to take care of yourself, because when you do that, you can give yourself more fully to the mission, to your family, and to, the world when it needs you.
Absolutely. It's not only is it not selfish, it's essential.
Yeah.
It's essential for us to be our healthiest self. Otherwise, we get burned out. Otherwise, we're easily triggered. Otherwise, we're not able to think as clearly, and we become weaker physically and emotionally. And that's not what we're looking for if we are in leadership positions, especially high risk leadership positions.
Yeah. When I was in company command, I think this is like a perfect example of it, is that I would wake up at 4:45 in the morning every day, um, kind of fill myself up, and then I would go into work, and then I would be run my organization to almost 6 o'clock at night, and then get back, spend time with my family from 6 to 7, put them to bed. And then it was kind of like my wife and myself. But if I didn't have that morning of being intentional, then it would just throw my entire day off. I had to show up like, with like a light switch. It had to be switched on, and that morning routine was so critical for me. I, I would love to really start, where did this start for you, of getting into wellness and the whole Miracle Morning? How did you get involved with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I was a child, I had some very, very intense health challenges. I had a lot of assistive devices that helped me get through the day. I had a lot of very heavy medications that doctors thought were necessary for the conditions that I had. There were a lot of physical and mental limitations imposed on my life. And when I was 19, I lost the ability to walk. And the journey to relearn to walk again was the catalyst for my personal leadership awareness. I didn't even know what it looked like to take personal responsibility for my own well being. I actually thought that other people, professionals, especially leaders in their field, had my best interest in mind. And so I never questioned the doctors. I never questioned really any of the treatments or therapies, because these guys knew what they were doing. And when I lost the ability to walk, that opened my eyes to the multitude of different options that weren't even offered to me to help me feel strong, and not just strong, but not to regain all that I had lost at that
Mm.
point, and to feel well throughout the day. The prognosis from doctors was that things were not good and they'd continue to progress my whole life. And the conditions that I have are genetic. And so I've watched my mom over time get progressively have a lot more symptoms. And I told myself I wanted to be someone that was getting stronger and stronger, not weaker and weaker. And I went on a journey to find out what it would look like to incorporate lots of different Eastern, Western, and leadership practices into my life. And that's where wellness kind of became a forefront curiosity for me. And I relearned to walk again. That's another story. And right after that, I met a guy named Hal Elrod. And he immediately challenged me to try this thing that he just discovered. And he and a couple of friends were doing it. He called it the miracle morning. He said, I want you to wake up a little bit earlier than you normally do. And I want you to pour into yourself. I want you to give time to you. And I immediately pushed back. I was like, I'm a no.
That's hard pass.
A hard pass, like love you so much and no. And the limiting beliefs for why I was a no were very valid. What if I wake up and have a seizure? What if I was throwing up all night? What if limiting belief, health symptom?
Yeah.
Like that was a whole series of my narrative. And he very clearly gave me some pushback and said, what if you changed the way that you showed up to your life and it changed the outcome that you had? And right then I thought to myself, if I took personal responsibility for my own role as a leader in my illness or wellness journey, what would that look like? And that was the moment I said yes. I'm a yes to getting up early, but I then gave him more pushback and said I'm a no to the concept. Like I didn't understand the ask. And this was way back before wellness was popularized. And he said, I wanted you to wake up and do some kind of silence, some kind of affirmations, some kind of visualization. I want you to exercise, read, and scribe. And so the last three, exercise, reading, and scribing, I fundamentally understood those. We read and wrote in school. I went to physical therapy my whole life. But the first three, this silence, like I didn't know how to quiet my mind. I thought that was like very foreign and confusing. I didn't know anything about breath work practices. I didn't really know anything about mindfulness at that point. This was 15 years ago. And then he said something about affirmations, and I didn't understand positive language at all. In fact, I had a negative feedback loop that was reinforcing, you're sick and you'll always be sick. These symptoms will always be there, not like you can do it and try new things. So that the affirmations didn't make any sense. And then visualization, again, totally foreign. Like I didn't see how visualizing something would make any difference. And he gave me some clear feedback on how I was already affirming and visualizing my worst possible future. He said, you're already doing those things, but you're affirming all the things that you don't want. You're visualizing the things that you haven't even tried, not working because you're in a narrative where you're sick and you'll always be sick. So you're literally visualizing that. And that kind of blew my mind because I didn't actually understand that my mind was playing a role in how I was showing up. I understood, what I was experiencing, but nothing really beyond or my leadership role in it. So the next day I said that I was going to, I said, yes, I'm going to try this thing. And the next day in my first miracle morning, I very clearly saw in my visualization that if I did some version of habit stacking in the morning, some positive habit stacking in the morning, I'd never spend another 24 hours in bed or in a hospital ever again. And it's been 15 years, and that is 100% the case. I've never missed a day, and I intend to never miss a day for my whole life.
Yeah. So I think you and I have that extreme discipline when it comes to our morning routines. I think you're the only other person that I could confidently say that about. Is like I could be TDY to San Francisco, and it doesn't matter if I have a meeting at 8:00. Then I'll tailor my morning routine to where I can get everything in because it's so important. And you said a couple of things that I really want to go back and press upon, and self leadership. So you talked about self leadership, and I see leadership as I'm kind of working through this in my mind is like a military operation in a way. Is there's phases upon it to where it's a journey, it's not a destination. John Maxwell talks about leadership as a verb. It's an action, and we're constantly moving and we're taking people there. But the first phase is ourselves, and it takes time to kind of discover who we are and then realize that we're a leader. I think every single one of us, even if you don't have a team that you're leading, even if you don't have a family, you have to learn to lead yourself. And it starts in the morning. When the alarm clock goes off, do you get up and do you go through a routine? Because then that sets the entire day, the entire pace of the day. So thank you for highlighting that. And another beautiful thing that you said, and I wondered if you can maybe go into it a little bit deeper, is habit stacking. Could you define that?
Yeah. So the Miracle Morning, the acronym is the SAVERS:
Mm,
silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. But really, that's just some version of stacking things on top of each other that are good for each other. And I learned this from a brilliant physician when he gave me this analogy about the symptoms I was experiencing. And he said, each thing that you do is going to stack 5% in the direction of wellness for
mm,
you. You have to do more for you to get stronger because you're fighting against something. And so I thought to myself, if I stack drinking water and then going on a walk and then this and then this and then this and then this, I'm going to build momentum faster. That's why the miracle morning, that's why having a morning practice is so important, because you're really looking to build momentum for your whole day. You don't know what's in front of you. There's always going to be chaos. These are the things we can guarantee. Like
I
there's
love
going to
that.
be some kind of uncertainty. There's going to be some kind of, wild card variables. There's going to be some kind of like very small to large drama that's happening personally or professionally. And we need to show up as our best selves so that we can lead those around us. And I do want to highlight just one stark difference but similarity between the two of us, because I grew up very physically challenged. The symptoms that I have, some of them have gone away, some of them are definitely still around, and new ones come up all the time. And so, given how I operate in my own body, I set the bar low. You are I aspire to be as strong as you one day, Josh.
Well, thank you.
But I set the bar low, and I haven't missed a day in the last 15 years because I said to myself, no matter what, I'm going to give myself a bare minimum of 6 minutes, no matter what. And often that's 10 or 20 or 30 or 2 hours or 3 hours, but it doesn't matter. And if today all I have is 10 minutes, and tomorrow is an hour, and the next day is 2 hours, I am guaranteeing that I'm going to stack multiple habits that are going to serve me. And I supplement, especially on the days that my miracle morning is less than an hour. I supplement and have a lot of practices in transition meetings, like literally utilizing the things that I need throughout the day to maintain being a conscious leader in whatever setting I'm in. And so for you, I know your practice is multiple hours long and you're amazing and you got it together every day, no matter what. You got like a very specific thing. But for me, my practice looks different every morning. It's based on what I need to be physically and mentally strong enough that day. Sometimes the reading is longer, sometimes the journaling is longer, sometimes certain practices I extend, and sometimes I extend others depending upon my needs. Yet we're both the exact same in our discipline. We both said, this is a thing, and I'm going to do it in a way that works for me. And that's something that if people understood that they could be flexible with what the discipline was, like if I was trying to compare myself to you, I'd feel like a failure. But I compare myself as a leader to who I used to be and who I choose to be. And that's something that I think is essential within leadership, because if we're comparing ourselves, it's a one-to-one game. When we compare ourselves to who we were and who we want to be, then we're able to step into the best version of ourselves to be the strongest leaders. So we're not comparing ourselves to someone else's potential.
That is an amazing point to highlight, and because you and I have that, I think, that extreme level of discipline, but I hold myself to such a high standard. I think like my morning routine starts at 4 in the morning, and then I don't leave to go to work till probably like 7:30. A very intensive workout broke down in the morning, like reading 30 minutes in the morning, journaling. I spend 1 hour a day like deliberately thinking, and I can thank you for that, because I had a realization, what we think and like how we think, and you talked about this with the power of positive thinking, shapes our beliefs, and then as we go into this world with those beliefs and those patterns, well, then those start our actions that we live out every day. And then our actions, they forge our legacy, our reputation, our character, and all of those beautiful things. And I didn't realize that until I really fully embraced the scribing. As I'm going to be honest with you, like when I was in the clubhouse, I think you asked like what was the most challenging part of the savers, and like to me it was scribing, because I was like, what am I writing about? And then I was doing it all wrong. Is I was trying to like literally journal, what I was going to do in the day, and what I did yesterday, what worked, what didn't work. But then I aligned my passion. Okay, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about leadership. Why don't I start journaling about leadership? And then like maybe 2 months later, 110 blogs are outlined, and like then that's when the spark lit, and scribing turned almost into a meditation style like therapy for me. And like I didn't truly understand that until I fully embraced it. And every single person has their own morning routine. What I do, and you compare yourself to me, you'll fail. And that's not a bad thing. Every single person has their own unique strengths. It's kind of the rule of strengths, is that we have our own unique strengths that is given to us, and then we have to focus on those. And being able to do that in me shows up differently than to you. But if you compare yourself to me, then you're going to allow those self-sabotaging negative thoughts to come in. And I pulled this quote up because I love Aristotle. Like one of my favorite quotes is, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And when I saw that, it just beautifully resonated with what you said. Yep. That's spot on.
I love what you just shared. First of all, I love Aristotle and love that quote. And I love what you just shared about scribing, because when we presence ourselves with powerful questions, the things that we avoid become things that we're curious about, and they can lead to things that we didn't even see coming, like blogs, like a
Yeah.
podcast, like all these other ways that you not only stepped into leadership, but share leadership. And it starts with the questions that we ask ourselves. You just gave a perfect sequence. Questions lead to actions, and that leads to places that we didn't, even imagine. And if we want to be the types of leaders that we're proud of one day, it's a constant evolution of asking ourselves powerful questions.
Hmm.
And one of those questions that I love comes from one of my favorite affirmations. I am where I am because of who I was. Yet where I go depends entirely on who I choose to be. And I'll consistently ask myself, with whatever leadership role I'm put in, who do I choose to be? Who do I choose to be in this moment? Who do I choose to be for this team? Who do I choose to be as a participant in this ecosystem? And that keeps me grounded and guiding me in a direction where I can lead with integrity.
I love that. One of my affirmations, and I picked this up from a guest that I had on Tells Leadership, Tim, and he talked about in his book, the Society of Secret, or the Secret Society of, I have to look it up. I can't remember it now. It's a tongue twister. But he talked about, who am I here for? So that was the question that he always asked himself. Versus, I think a lot of people kind of go into leadership positions and they say, what am I here for? Because they're trying to get something out of it. But leadership at its core is the truest of servant leadership. There is no agenda, and it's a very unpopular job most of the time. And you always have to center yourself with the affirmation I love using now is, who am I here for? And you totally stole my thunder. I was going to ask you what affirmation was your favorite, because I know you wrote a whole book of positive affirmations. But
I did. And I love it so much. What's my favorite affirmation? I actually love a lot of them that aren't even in the book. I have this tagline that I say when I sign off the show, and it's keep shining, the world needs your light. I love that one because I remember that there's so much good inside of each of us that we often dim because there's like this subconscious negative narrative that's playing over and over. And that's why I made the book. I wanted to help people create new neural pathways towards believing in themselves. And it starts with changing the language that we have our conversation with ourselves surrounding. Like we talk to ourselves more than anybody else. Like we talk to literally ourselves, we talk to all of the other people combined. And so if we are our own biggest cheerleader, lots of possibilities are coming forward. But if we are our own biggest critic, there's a lot of challenges that we create for ourselves in being a leader. And so when I think about affirmations, I literally love all of them. I love them all.
That's why you had to write a book, because you love them all.
I have the ability to change or create anything in my life starting now. That one's a powerful one because I'll consistently ask myself, what am I working on changing or creating in my life as a leader right now in the role that I'm in? And, something new will come up, or something that I didn't see coming will come up. Another one that I absolutely love is the greatest gift I can give to others is simply to fulfill my potential, to live in alignment with my values so that I can show others how to do the same. And I think that that's the most pertinent affirmation to leadership, because there are two types of leaders. And when you talk about like servant leadership, there's someone with a title and people already know that they're a leader. And then there's literally every one of us in all roles that we play. Because every moment someone is witnessing how we're showing up, whether it's that person that you held the door for or not. Literally every single person is coexisting together in this ecosystem, and somebody's watching your every move, like for real. Like whatever you post, like someone is watching your every move, and they're being affected by how you show up. And so it's in those moments where your actions may inspire someone else. Like, here's an example. We met because of the Miracle Morning Mindset and Motivation room on Clubhouse. So I have run that room for over 500 days in a row, didn't even miss a beat. And there was about 200-ish days that there were a lot of other co-hosts that either ran or co-ran that with me. Of the 400 plus thousand people that came through that show, I know thousands of them started podcasts, started masterminds, left their job, did something huge because of what I did. And of those people, I've heard from probably 50 of them that said, it was this episode that got me to do X and Y and Z. I now have an app. I now have a this. I have a that. I started a podcast. Whatever. And so many of them that I just know they're doing amazing things. And it was because of my leadership, but they didn't mention it to me. And so that's a perfect example that sometimes in life you'll hear that the thing that you did because of your own integrity, other people, started and ran with their own thing because of it. I know multiple people that have Clubhouse shows daily or multiple times a day or weekly. And they literally have said to me, I started my show because I thought if you could do it, I could do it. Amazing. The greatest gift we can give to others is simply to fulfill our potential so that we can show others how to fulfill theirs. Sometimes being a leader is just literally living in our own integrity, because you're modeling what's possible for others who are living in their self-doubt and let me quit before I start world.
Yeah, we were talking about there's two different types of leaders. I've kind of broken that down. So once you master yourself, phase one, I think the second phase of leadership is situational leadership, and that's where you have the time to actually test your mettle. What are you made of? You're given a position, you're given a title, you're given a rank, and when you take over that, you gain authority, but authority is temporary. So I like to think of it in the military as there's a 90-day rule. In 90 days, you have to determine how the organization's running. Then you have to identify efficiencies and build authentic relationships to get results. And I think that you can choose two paths when you do that 90 days. You can either go down a toxic role or you can choose a transformational role. And I think that all comes back about thinking, of how we think and how we view people. And you said something else that was beautiful, and it's some of the rules of leadership that I've been journaling about. And again, I can thank you for helping me find those. Is the rule of mirrors. And I was thinking about how a leader can come into an organization and either destroy the culture and the climate within a short period of time, or they can completely turn it around. And I think one of the greatest examples of that is when I was a platoon leader in combat. Our first sergeant at the time was probably the worst leader that I've ever had. I'm not going to say his name because I think that's disrespectful, but he would have us pull guard duty on porta johns because there were cigarette butts out, and we were all day, going out. Men went out all day doing patrols, sometimes 2-3 patrols a day in Afghanistan, 110 degrees. He never left his air conditioned facility, and when he did, he was always wearing his PTs or his physical training uniform. And the culture of that organization got so bad that one of the platoons called themselves the Expendables. And when a brigade commander went there, full bird colonel went to go visit them, they saw Expendables painted on the side of their common operating post, or where they did their missions from. And they're like, how did the culture get to here where you guys think that you're expendable? And it all came back to the root cause of that first sergeant, of just viewing people as objects to manipulate for his own personal gain or fear. I don't know what he had, right? Like maybe he was too afraid to give power to the team because he felt that he had to be in charge. But then a new first sergeant came in, turned the organization around within 90 days. The NCO Corps grew strong. The climate of that organization grew from one of where everything was internalized to where everything was externalized. Problems were being sent to the leaders, but it wasn't just a problem. Here's some solutions. It started to become a problem-solving organization, and it blew my mind because that was really my first opportunity at an organization to see that. Before going through college and doing all those other things, you're a leader, sports teams and things like that, but such a large scale, and being able to see how one person can affect hundreds of people in such a short period of time, is that leadership is so important. So the rule of mirrors, how you present yourself to your organization will be reflected back, not just towards you, but towards everyone that your company interacts with. And I think that can go too with just yourself and negative self-talk. Yeah, I love that. And I wanted to highlight that because I think that that's important.
You're amazing.
Well,
You're
you're
amazing.
amazing.
I love this show because you are finding so many types of diverse leaders that have so many qualities in common and are in such diverse situations. And it takes a certain type of person to stand up for what is best for the collective, and to turn a culture and climate around, and to really hold the space that's necessary to serve people at the level that they need versus, you know, anything that wouldn't, versus anything that wouldn't. And so I applaud you for crowdsourcing so much wisdom from so many leaders, because it's what we need. All leaders need to learn how we can level up.
I love that. So I kind of want to go back to your leadership journey. Is when was that first time? So you started the Miracle Morning with Hal Elrod. You were doing the morning routines. When did you realize that you were a leader? The first time you saw yourself as, okay, I'm a leader of this and I'm going to share it with the world.
Very shortly after he shared the Miracle Morning with me, I started sharing it with others. Like Epiphany, there was no book, there was no movement, there was no Facebook group, there was nothing. It was just a couple of us getting up early and once a week letting each other know, like, was that good or not? That was it. And I remember the first time I got a call from Hal, and he said, "You wouldn't believe it. I just saw someone make a YouTube video talking about their miracle morning."
Mm,
And I reached out to that guy because it was a total stranger. And he said, "Oh, I heard about the miracle morning from Brianna Greenspan. It totally changed my
wow.
life." And Hal talks about this guy in the book. He calls him, like it's a chapter called "Who the Heck is Joe?" And when I think about, like, I'm the person that told the first groupie of what became a global movement, and this guy made such a grand gesture that he literally made a 5 a.m., like, look, it's 5 a.m. I just woke up. I'm doing the Miracle Morning YouTube video back in like
Wow.
2009.
Wow.
And that when I look back, that was the first time I thought like, oh, the words that I say matter. People are asking me, that guy asked me what I was doing to be so successful. I just learned to walk again. I was the number one salesperson at my company at that time. And I said, I'm waking up early and pouring into myself. I'm giving myself time before I give time to the world. And that really stuck with him. And it stuck with me that someone who was struggling would ask me for help. And then, he didn't even tell me it was helpful, but he told the internet. And that, showed me that there's so many. And I never thought twice about our conversation. It was just like a random coffee with a random guy. And then that was it. But the words that I shared had such an impact on his life that I realized I actually am a leader in small and large ways, and then have, stepped into that role in so many other ways over the last 15 years by finding my voice and by sharing with those in similar or completely different circumstances, what I've learned about personal responsibility and personal leadership and how that impacts the ways that we serve others.
Team, I want to take a quick break from this episode and personally invite you to join our tribe. Are you looking for a community of leaders? If you are a leader at any level, join our Purposeful Accountable Leaders private Facebook or LinkedIn group. We would love to have you in the team. My mission is to create a community that allows leaders to ask questions, celebrate wins, and share lessons learned. All I ask is that you follow the B rule. Be respectful, be humble, be present, and add value to the community. You can find the link in the show notes to either join the Facebook or LinkedIn group or simply just search Purposeful Accountable Leaders. Back to the podcast. This is another, I think, amazing point that I just want to go back to make sure we really hit that is you talk about, I think, compounding, right? So like the rule of compounding, it's another thing I identified is it can either be a negative or a positive. So the Socrates paradox states, if you keep adding a grain of sand to a heap, when does that truly become a pile and start to tip over? And I think if you have those negative self-talk, and you're continually building that up, then you're going to have a compounding effect that's negative in your life. But you were able to take this miracle morning routine that truly changed, I think your physical and then your mental life, and then started sharing it with other people. How many people, I would love to hear a guess, because I couldn't even fathom it. Have you impacted to date since you started this?
Innumerable. Like it's unbelievable. Like just to think, oh well, just with the little clubhouse show, that's impacted over 400,000 people. Just with the schools project, that's over 300,000 people. In the last 15 years, I can't even tell you how many people I told about the Miracle Morning, but forget those people. Think about the ones that brought it to their companies and implemented it system wide. Like I cannot tell you the impact of me just saying, I'm going to do this thing and I hope it helps me. And when it did help me, I'm going to keep doing that thing. And other people noticed. It wasn't even like I was preaching, you guys should do this thing. It's great. It was just people asking me, you were so weak. You're getting stronger and stronger. What happened? What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm simply waking up earlier, and I do it a lot because it's helpful. And that was mind blowing for people because
I love how simple it is.
Really not rocket science, but people make it so big. And I'm like, here's the thing. If I'm not showing up for myself, I probably am not going to feel good. And if I don't feel good, I can't help others. And if I can't help others, then I hope I can help myself, but I might even feel so yucky I won't even be able to help myself. So like, what does it look like to be as strong as I can be? Showing up for me. And the gift is that I'm then strong enough to show up for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people.
That is the key point that I want people to really take away, is that if you truly believe in something, you can make a change, and it just starts at one person at a time. Because then if you think about it like a compounding effect, is you shaped one person's life, they went out and they shaped one person's life. But if you can do that to 10 people, and then 10 people can do that to 10 more people, and then to 10 more people, and then to 10 more people, then you really get that. I think Einstein called it the 11th wonder of the world, compounding. And that's what's
Yeah.
so beautiful, is that anyone can change the world, but it takes routine, accountability, and discipline. I call it RAD. If you want to be a RAD leader, it takes routine, accountability, and discipline. And eventually you're going to tap into the rule of compounding. I, I love that.
I love that so much. Someone was and I were just talking about the show and the numbers of the compounding effect of just the Clubhouse show. They said over 400,000 people have been positively impacted by this
Wow.
show. I guarantee a lot of them impacted at least one person. And I know a lot of them, the 50 or 100 or 1,000 of them impacted tens of thousands of people.
Mm.
And so it's that small amount that went so big. One person brought us to New York City, and we were able to impact hundreds of
Wow.
schools, and not just the students, but their parents, the teachers, more than 250,000 people just from that one person.
Who was I remember that too. I think that I was in that Clubhouse group that day when they talked about how they were taking this to the schools, and that
Yeah,
teachers started to embrace it. And it's that when I heard that, I was like, light bulb, like, why isn't this in schools? It's an
right.
amazing tool. And I think that's a great point to kind of maybe transition to, is where are you currently at on your journey?
Well, I'm in so many places. I have, just since the Clubhouse room, we published 3 more
Oh,
books. We
wow.
started another global movement called Everything is Right About You. And that's one of the signature affirmations that we're using with schools, because we've noticed that self-confidence is really the biggest mental health
Yep.
issue that we have right now. If people don't believe in themselves, then the negative feedback loop brings up so many other challenges that hold us further back than whatever we're naturally struggling with to begin
Mm.
with. And so multiple books from there, multiple projects from that. And we've brought the Miracle Morning to thousands of schools across the globe, almost 300 schools in just one city alone.
300 schools in one city alone. That's awesome.
So there's a lot going on, but it's all within the realm of, as the world gets crazier and crazier, who do you choose to show up
Yeah.
as? Are you going to double down on things that work, that help you to not only stay sane, but be of service? And if you are, amazing, we're on the same journey. And if you're not, that invitation is open to you as well.
There's a quote in the Bible that I always go back to, and I have it pulled up because to me, like, I think this beautifully like sums it up. So Matthew chapter 5, verse like 14 through 16 is that you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do the people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, that they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see the good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. I think that that's what you're doing. You're bringing so much light into the world, and I always call like I love that.
It says, shine, the world needs your light.
I love that.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So, what drives you can still every single day to keep pushing this, the Miracle Morning movement, to keep growing every day? How is your passion? Has your passion changed at all over the years?
Yeah. When for many years, Miracle Morning was something that I loved, but my passion was really mentoring people with chronic and terminal illnesses, specifically like people, young children that had similar conditions to what I grew up with, that didn't know that there was another path, that didn't know that, getting sicker and sicker and living like a really poor quality of life was the only, like they thought that that was the only
Yeah.
option. And so supporting others to know that there's so much available to help us get strong. But we have to put in the work, and consistently. It's not a band-aid solution. And I thought that that was a big passion for a long time. And then I realized that actually everybody that like almost every person that I meet has some kind of limiting belief or self-doubt, and that's holding everybody back. And to be able to understand that there are simple things that we can do every single moment to redirect our focus to being the best version of ourselves, that's really how we can consistently show up and shine in the hardest moments that we have yet to encounter. And that's what drives me every day. Like, I'm seeing such, just in the today, our whole team had a trauma response meeting because one of the students at a school that we work with was murdered in broad daylight in front of other
Wow.
students. There were two kids that committed suicide in another school that we work with, that we didn't work with them until after that happened, but they reached out and said that the school needed some kind of a culture and climate shift, and they'd heard we would be helpful. And multiple other deaths amongst staff members, amongst PTA members, amongst partners of teachers. And as a result, the conversation was surrounding, like, what do we do to hold space for those that are sitting in a space of trauma as leaders, as those that understand that you can respond to trauma with growth if you're clear about how to show up. And post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress, they're both options. And so when I think about what drives me, it's that I'm constantly hearing these stories of like challenging, really hard things happening, and not enough useful tools on the table for people to show up in a way that they're proud of, for people to, we call it unpacking the rocks in our backpack. Are we going to hold trauma and let it dictate the rest of our life, or we're going to continuously show up in the face of the fire and, have the tools and supports that we need internally and externally to be leaders consistently? So that is a big driving force for continuing to serve other audiences, whether it's chronically ill people, whether it's students in the whole education field, etc.
I love how it can be universally applied to everything. It could be universally applied to the military with PTSD, and how you talked about post-traumatic growth versus stress. And I never thought of it like that until you said that. That is a question worthy of scribing. So I'm going to define the difference between those two. That's something beautiful
Yeah.
to lay out.
And many people have, and there's tons of supports that my team bring to organizations surrounding post-traumatic growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy because 70% of the population responds to trauma with growth, yet we live in a negativity biased society where even if most of the things in your day or most of the things in your story are positive, we're literally just highlighting
Yes.
the one or multiple negative aspects of the entire experience. And so if the entire world is sitting in a space of trauma, most people, more than half, are responding with resilience, yet we're only highlighting those that aren't. And those that aren't because they don't have the proper tools, and we haven't normalized that most do. And that's kind of crazy because when we only are talking about one thing, okay, people go through crazy hard experiences and they hold the trauma, then that becomes that normalizes it for people who are in trauma. And if we knew that there were two ways to respond, then we'd probably choose to learn from the experience we're sitting in and to be the most resilient version of ourselves. There's so much more to it. I know we can't get into this one right now, but neuroplasticity is fascinating, and the way that our brain functions is fascinating, and the way that we choose to respond is really, we said this affirmation before: the greatest gift I can give to others is simply to fulfill my potential so that I can show others how to fulfill theirs. When you see someone in a traumatic experience and they show up as their most resilient self, it inspires you in a traumatic experience to also show up as your most resilient self.
It does. 100%.
And that's really, a demonstration of leadership through action.
That is really powerful content, Brie. It truly is. And I think there's two ways of thinking about it. When you go through a traumatic event, you can either fall into the victim, or you can turn into the thriver and begin to thrive with it. Use it as a motivation. Remember the experience because it's the past, but the past you can't change. So is it a fact or an issue? Facts are the past. Issue is in the present right now. What can you actually change? So take that experience, gain the wisdom, and then move forward. So in the military, they have a concept called a short halt. And anytime that you kind of run into an issue, or you just got done with an issue and you're transitioning into another military operation, or you're getting ready to actually do actions on the objective, we always do a SEALs halt. So stop, look, listen, and you're going to think this is weird, but smell. Stop, look, listen, and smell. But I kind of break it down to stop, the acronym STOP. So silence, take a tactical pause, observe your
Mm.
surroundings, and then pursue with purpose. And I think that's what happens is people don't, I think, truly break down those traumatic experiences and pull what should be pulled from them. Instead, they pull from the viewpoint of I was a victim and there's nothing that I can do to ever change. And they get into that negative mindset versus like, all right, what good could come out of this? And I say that because like my affirmation that I go to, I call it my strength statement, is every day is a gift. I'm not going to waste mine. And I, when I say that, it puts me back into all of those memories, even almost at childhood when I almost died from hemorrhaging after a surgery. And it just takes me back to all of that just in an instant. And it recenters me, puts me in the right change of mind. And then I go pursue with purpose. I love that.
I love it so much. You're amazing.
Ah,
Thank you for being such a leader in your families. Thank you so much for being a leader for our country. Thanks so much for being an individual leader and inspiring leadership in so many others, and for, inviting a conversation surrounding leadership styles and, crowdsourcing leadership wisdom. Everything is right about you.
I love that. I need to have Dr. Jill on here too, by the way. I definitely need to have her back here.
Just looking around. Hold on. I wish I could grab our 2 books. We came out with 2 books together in the last week.
That's so impressive. One question before we kind of get to the final show segment that I really want, and I wanted to ask you this, is how can a leader use these wellness practices in their organization as a tool? Like right now, what
Mm.
could be one thing that someone could take and apply?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you can download the Miracle Morning
Mm-hmm.
app. Like every single person should have some kind of
Yeah.
accountability. And if you don't have somebody that you're already reporting to, literally, like this is the number one thing you can start with tomorrow. Call your friend and say, hey, do you want to start, checking in surrounding X, Y, Z, whatever it is? Set your own rules for what works for you
Mm.
and do it tomorrow. That's like step one. And if you don't have someone that you can check in with, or you want additional, accountability, the Miracle Morning app, it's free, it's amazing. And you can literally check in on all of those practices to track your progress. There's all of these other things, whether you need guided tracks, or you want a journal, or you want, to quote unquote keep yourself accountable, or you need extra support, that's all available also. But the accountability piece is the number one thing that you can do. And if you're trying to do something with an organization, start a challenge. Do a 30-day challenge, because we have seen millions of people in organizations say that our team came together, we were able to be significantly more productive, we're all healthier, we're thriving, we're more balanced because we did this thing, and we did this thing together. What does that thing look like? Setting yourself up for success at the beginning of your day. There's tons of free bonuses. If you go to tmmbooks.com, that'll give you all the Miracle Morning free bonuses, bedtime affirmations, all kinds of 30-day challenge supports, and tons of other resources. But when I think about like what can you do tomorrow, think about what works for you. And if there are a lot of things that work for you and that seems overwhelming, start with one and set the bar low. Say, I'm going to read this book that's been sitting on my counter for 10 minutes tomorrow morning. And maybe you're someone like Josh and you're like, all right, I already get up at 5. I'm going to get up at 4. Add in that thing that you've been thinking about. Doesn't matter where you are in your journey, but add something in and get accountability. This is not like you're jumping through fire. This is something that's easy. It can expand upon as you feel more comfortable or see the benefits. You can start tomorrow by having another practice added to your routine. You really want to get some traction, stack them. You really, really want to get some traction immediately, do a miracle morning. And that's stacking I can't even talk. 6 practices that are proven to work. You want to transform your family. We have a book called The Miracle Morning for Parents and Families, and that talks all about the children's acronym. It's called CHARMS: creativity, health, affirmations, reading, meditation, and service. And people do them as a family, like you're reading, your kids meditating, and there's a lot of opportunities in your own family unit or in your company or in your whatever it is, church group, whatever it is, in your team, where you can immediately find accountability and develop healthy habits as a unit.
I love that. And I think one of the biggest things that I would just resonate with what you said is accountability. It's easy to do miracle morning one day. It's easy to do it 2 days, 3 days, but the 4th day, that is when discipline truly kicks in, and you have to have accountability. And then I think that app that you have, and that's why I love you too, is that you're not even charging anything for the app. You're providing a free accountability tool, or the Clubhouse. You could join the accountability, the Clubhouse room, and use that as an accountability partner.
Like, here's the thing. The miracle morning, it's not rocket science. And so 90% of the offerings are free. We're literally just saying, like, you don't even really need to read the book. You just, have to fundamentally understand the concept. But there's an app, it's free. There's a movie, it's free. There's tons of bonuses, they're free. The podcast, it's free. The Clubhouse is free. The live events often are free. And so there's so many different ways. If you need that motivation, if you need a mindset shift, like, we're here to support. And then there's certain people that say, like, I want more. So there's, a subscription version of the app. There's, a couple of paid live in-person multi-day events that happen from time to time. There's books that you can buy, but almost everything is free. Because it's that we want the barrier to entry to be so low that you taking responsibility for yourself is the real like that's the thing that you have to do.
That.
It's not like you have to pay someone. You have to say, I'm in, and then follow through.
That is beautiful. It's time for our final show segment that I like to call the Killer Bees. These are the same 4 questions that I ask every guest on the Tales of Leadership podcast. Be brief, be brilliant, be present, and be gone. Question 1. What do you believe separates an average leader from an extraordinary leader?
Their level of consciousness.
I'm going to love your answers too, because a lot of these are usually the same, but I feel like yours are going to be totally different. And I love that. Okay. So question 2, what is one resource that you could recommend to our listeners?
To follow up on that first answer, David Hawkins' Chart of Consciousness. It's in a book called Power versus Force, and deeply explained in a book called Letting Go. Yet the state of consciousness that you show up in every moment dictates your outcome.
Wow. Could you say that one more time? Because I want to write that down.
Yeah, the state of consciousness that you show up in every moment dictates the outcome.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to get that book. Okay, so question 3. If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. If I could give my younger self a piece of advice, it would literally... I'm looking at the affirmations on my wall right now. I'm taking them off. I believe you can speak things into existence. I believe in myself. So I think I would tell my younger self that believing in my possibilities and acknowledging all my strengths would be the catalyst to developing leadership skills.
Wow. I love that. All right. The final question. How can our listeners find you and how can they add value to your mission?
I'm not really so like social media savvy. I'm more like a quiet helper person. So I don't know. You can Google me. I'm sure like I have a website, BriannaGreenspan.com. I've got some kind of like social media. There's a Clubhouse presence. Just look up the Miracle Morning. Very chill. And how can they add value? When you look up the chart of consciousness, you'll see that there's lower states of consciousness and higher states of consciousness. Choose to be someone that does something courageous each and every day. The threshold of elevated consciousness. Be part of the energetic shift in the planet to be the best version of yourselves. We collectively need to normalize showing up as leaders in every respect, and we can all do that together. It's not my mission, it's a world mission. And so all of you guys can play a role in making really good choices in the leadership roles that you're in to serve the communities that you're a part of.
That's amazing. Bri, I always talk about I'm trying to build better leaders, and I define them as PALs, purposeful, accountable leaders. And you are a purposeful, accountable leader. Every time I talk to you, it just fires me up. So thank you so much for spending this hour with me and being intentional.
It was my honor and privilege. You're such an amazing leader, and thank you for all that you do.
Absolutely. Have a great night. All right, team. It's time for our after action review. What are the top 3 takeaways you should have? I know Brianna very well because we've known each other for a long time, especially before I started this podcast. So I'm going to leave you with a very simple after action review today with the 3 things that you can take and start implementing and then what you'll achieve in your life. First key takeaway is start habit stacking right now. Go get the book, Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Start implementing the very simple Savers program: silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Second key takeaway is once you start doing that, learn what works for you. As you're going through that book or whatever routine that you think that will work for you, allow yourself to mature into that routine, because what is in that book, what you discover for yourself, isn't going to be what works for me. If you compare yourself to what I do every single day, then you will fail, because we're all made in God's image and we all have our own unique set of strengths and weaknesses. I am very routine, extremely accountable, and extremely disciplined. Those are some of the strengths and those are my core values. So don't judge yourself compared to other people. All right. So first key takeaway, habit stacking. Start a Miracle Morning routine focused around the SAVER acronym. And then number 2, shape that into what works for you. And the third key takeaway, tap into the rule of compounding. If you can push beyond the discomfort of waking up every morning and filling up your own cup, you're going to shift your mindset from one of negative, toxic thoughts to abundant thoughts. 3 key takeaways. Very easy. Start a morning routine, tailor it to what works for you, and then tap into the rule of compounding. If you've gotten any value from this episode, do me a favor, rate this podcast, but most importantly, share it with someone who is just starting out on their leadership journey. I'm your host, Josh McMillian, saying every day is a gift. Don't waste yours. I'll see you next time.